My name's Jordan, and I'm an owner here at Emmanuel. I am here this morning with Lynette Bradford. She has been an owner at Emmanuel for 4.5 years, and she actually went on our Atlanta mission trip last year, and she was so inspired by what God taught her on that trip that she is leading that Atlanta mission trip this summer. So we're just here to learn from her today, and maybe you will be inspired by what she has to say to take your next step in missions as well. So Lynette, what drew you to go on the Atlanta mission trip?
I had been on several mission trips with my daughters when they were young, but it had been a long time. And when my husband and I came here, we felt drawn to missions. We went to Dean when the flood happened, watched our car float away, came home, and knew that our mission experience was not over, that God had more for us. So when we heard about Atlanta last year, we felt God calling us to do that. So we just stepped out and said, we don't know what you have, but we will go.
That's awesome. What's something that you think that God taught you during that trip last year?
For me, it was about boldness, stepping out of my comfort zone and sharing Jesus with strangers or with just anybody. He spoke to each of us on that trip in very different ways, but I'd like to share about my grandson for a minute. He was 17, he lives in Richmond, and he goes to a large church like Emmanuel there, but not Emmanuel, and he wanted to go on this trip with us, so we said, of course. And Connor's very shy. He literally spoke maybe 2 words the whole way to Atlanta, but throughout the week I saw him come out of his comfort zone, come out of his shyness, and God really worked in him. Throughout the week, he answered a specific call from God to lead a life group at his church. In the beginning, he was just internalizing everything, but then he actually began to listen and answer God's call for him. The last night of the mission trip, he and Leah Pataki led our devotion and just did a fantastic job. And after Connor got back, he did start that life group. The first night, he led the life group of 6th graders. He led six 6th graders to Jesus, and he was able to baptize them. And just a couple of weeks ago, he got to speak to his church and tell them about this Atlanta trip and what God did in his life. So for me, it was, Lynette, you got to be bold and speak. For Connor, it was an absolute call on his life.
Yeah, that is just so amazing to see what God can do just if we are obedient to him, through both you and Connor. What do you think is unique about the mission opportunity in Atlanta versus other trips?
Clarkston is the most diverse square mile in the United States. So we will interact with all sorts of people from different countries, different continents, different religions. We were able to witness to Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, atheists, all right there in 1 square mile.
I know that somebody out there, Lynette, has listened to your story and about how God has worked through you and worked through Connor in this trip. And somebody out there, God is telling them right now, missions is for you. This Atlanta trip, there's somebody in Atlanta that you're meant to go share the gospel with. Is it too late for them to join in for this year?
No way. It's not too late. The trip is July 13th through 19th, and we still have open spots. It's a great trip for families, for college students, for grandparents, just any age. It's a great trip.
And what would you say to somebody who maybe is on the fence that's considering missions as their next step? What would be your word to them?
I would say step out in faith. Just go. The Bible tells us 5 times in the New Testament, Jesus said, go and make disciples. So if he tells us to go, then we shouldn't be afraid. We just need to go.
Absolutely. If missions is your next step, please connect with us through the IBC app or at the Next Step station at your campus.